Hello again, I'm AWAC.
I'm Gamadev.
And welcome back to our Let's Play video blogcast thing, or at least so called until we can come up with a better name with it. And we are continuing our sojourn through Monster Manor, going through map 3, maybe map 4, we'll see. So last time I called attention to this screen coming up, that one right there, and we'll get to that eventually. And we got the logo as well. Still no tearing. I'll explain that in a bit. And we're gonna talk about the opening credits here with Les Hedger. So as you know, Les Hedger did the overview for this, and Bob Vieira wrote the script. But Kim Tempest did most of the artwork on this, and this. So the little smoke that you see coming in here. So the people in Studio 3DO said, "Oh my God, you used like digital smoke or something?" And she said, "No, I just put dry ice fog over a black canvas, and then matted it in with." So they were all like, "Ah, oh, that's so amazingly clever," and it's like, not really. It's fairly obvious, in fact. But I thought that was hilarious. They would just like immediately assume it was some like fancy Adobe Premiere plugin.
She spent like a week rendering with some procedural smoke, or
yeah, exactly.
Paid for an effects library where it's like, no, just go to the store, $2 worth of dry ice, you're done.
Yeah, a piece of black cloth. I don't remember the gentleman who put this together, this particular model and animation, but I believe he did it in 3D Studio because there was nothing on the Mac that would do this. And again, the Amiga wasn't quite up to this level at that time. And I remember seeing the model on a giant PC screen. It was like all of 1024 by 768. Oh wow!
Well, a decked out Amiga would have been okay.
Maybe.
I mean, they were doing Babylon 5 on the Amiga at this time, so
yeah. But they had like a stack of Amigas doing it.
Yes, you had to do this like probably in a week or something, and
right.
And, you know, back then, your average computer was, 10 times slower than my wristwatch is right now, so...
Yeah, you of course have an Android wristwatch.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think, I can't remember, we did this really quickly, too. I think this was, like, done in a total of 2 weeks. We checked the models out, and we did pencil tests and ran through it. We said, yeah, that looks good. And... So
the EA logo not tearing. What's
that about that? Okay, we'll just hang here on the options screen while I explain that. Okay, so 3DO provided code to do video streaming. It was like Lib3DO or something was called like that, and it was this QuickTime. I never looked at QuickTime, so I don't know if it actually resembled QuickTime. But it was a fairly obtuse set of code where you had to like register subscribers for chunk types, and they would get triggered, and I don't know how they handled how they handled synchronization or anything like that. But so this was basically a blob of code, and you just linked it into your program and pointed it at a file, and it would do everything else. And when I first ran it against the assets that we'd created, I saw this tear in the middle of the screen. This half of one frame and half of the next frame was being displayed at the same time, and I went, "What's going on here?" And so I saw that all the other titles that were under development at that time were doing it too. And I'm going, "What's going on here?" And so I looked at the code and discovered that they were rendering, the Cinepack decoder was decompressing to the front buffer, just decompressing to the visible buffer. And I'm going, "What the hell are you doing? Why did you do that?" And I looked at this, and I didn't know enough about Cinepack to know if every frame was a complete frame or whether they were doing deltas on the previous frame. They were applying...
Yeah, they have to do some deltas to get...
Right. So apparently they didn't do a double buffer delta where they apply deltas to 2 frames back. They applied it to 1 frame back. So I couldn't just simply double buffer in the ordinary manner. So I said, I don't like this. I wanted to see if I could do something about this. Turns out there's this wonderful feature in the 3DO that's part of the video RAMs. And as you probably know, video RAMs are dual ported. There's one port, which is address and data pins, and then there's the other port, which is the serial port, which marches pixels out to the DACs, to the video DACs.
Right.
Okay. And that serial port is 2 kilobytes in size. And when it runs out, it just like loads another 2 KB page and keeps shifting it out. During vertical blank, however, it's not doing anything because there's no information. The
Right.
video beam is retracing. So during vertical blank, you can do other stuff with that 2K buffer. And it turns out that it can load an entire 2K byte page like in one clock. It's incredibly fast to load 2K bytes. And then you can write that 2K byte page, that 2K byte shift register, to any other 2K byte page in video RAM
Right.
just as fast. So you can copy the entire display in like a video line.
That's very good.
Which is, yeah, I mean, it's faster than the cell engine can do it, faster than the CPU could do it. So what I did was I went into the main loop, in the rendering loop, and I said, okay, render to the back buffer, and then during vertical blank, use the video RAM serial port to copy to the front buffer. The result is no tearing. And I think I'm the only one who did that, because if you look at all the other games that came out during that time, you know, like from EA and everything, you'll see that tear in the middle of the screen.
Okay. Yeah, that's... Yep. Well, I mean, the whole thing about, not tearing and rendering the back buffer and all that stuff, that's a little bit of experience from animators, Disney Animator?
Yeah, a little bit of that. The Disney Animation Studio, which I also wrote for the Amiga. Not to toot my own horn.
Yes.
But yeah, a lot of stuff that I learned on the Amiga I brought forward to the 3DO. So let's load that game.
All right. Did it save it? Oh, that's good.
Yeah, remember, it was like I discovered we did lowercase.
Yes,
So.
yes, the old 3DO didn't have to buy memory cards because it had built-in NVRAM.
Yeah,
probably the last console to ever do that.
How much did we have? 64K bytes?
That was like 32K.
Ah,
Which, you can get a lot of games in. Games in this day, the save state was actually pretty small. The largest I think I've ever seen was 6K. And if you have something like Game Guru, you can compress them usually and make them even smaller. But
this is, I think, the level that people were complaining about the music.
yes, the thing is, it's actually good music, and it's very repetitive. Though is the main problem. And this level is the one where everybody goes, the Haunted Mansion. Between Les's voice,
okay,
and the little statues you get here, this is like straight out of the old, Haunted Mansion, and the wallpaper and all that stuff. This is like the most fun level before it starts getting really creepy in terms of like the music and everything.
Oh, there's the ghost.
Yes. I've heard it as the opera ghost because it does that scream, that wonderful, scream, very melodramatic scream.
Internally in the program, his name is George.
George.
Don't know why. His name is George.
So all these ghosts and stuff are actually they're stop motion, right?
Yes, they're stop motion animated. Kim Tempest did most of the work on this. I think they were most of them were like claymation models or like armatures that she put together. Yes, I know they're here because I played this a little earlier. Okay, actually, let me kill this guy. These guys over here.
Yeah, these are the ones that always like. If you don't check the corners, tendency that it will come up behind you and like, what the hell?
Stab you in the back.
And quite spooky when you play this in a dark room late at night.
So the artists asked me for animated textures. And I went, oh god, because we had like a really short time to do all this. You really want animated text? Why do you want animated textures? Oh, we want to do stuff. Fine. So I gave them animated textures, and this was the first thing. Oh, extra! Did you hear yippee?
Yeah, I heard
that. That's the sound it makes when you get an extra man. This is the first thing they did with the animated textures, and I went, oh, okay, that was worth the trouble. And I forget who did this. Was it Liz? It might have been Liz Beatrice who did that, but that's just great. So that made. Oh, hi there. Do I have another one over here?
You gotta have flickering candle flames and stuff. If you've ever lighted torches along the wall, of course, this is a house, so I guess you could have like a broken bulb or something.
Yeah, it was mostly torchlight. During the catacombs levels, which come up later, that's used to much greater effect. The flickering torchlight on the walls. Anyone over there? Okay. So if I remember correctly, yeah, kill them quickly. Ah.
Yeah, think, like I said, when I saw this and I thought, oh, you know, those guys look, the monsters look really great compared to, like, say, what you see in Doom, which are just obviously hand-drawn sprites. Castle Wolfenstein, where it's like, you know, whereas these, you know, they look like they were expensively rendered, but I'm guessing they were actually, you know, just
they were stop frame animated. Oh, poor Kim. She used 3DO animator to do a lot of this. She would first of all, she had like a video camera or some, I forget what kind of camera she used. Might have been because digital cameras really didn't exist back then. Got the key. And so she took frames. She took still frames of this, but 3DO animator was so unbelievably unreliable that you basically had to do like edit pixel. Oh, we're back in the main room. Edit a pixel, save. Edit another pixel, save. And if you didn't do that, you were at risk of losing your work. So, I'm out of keys. Great. All right. That's weird. Could have sworn I picked up. All right. Let's go here. Yeah, a lot of the wall art was done by Liz Beatrice, Greg Savoya. I think Stefan contributed to this as well. Going in here. Okay. This is another issue with some of the maps that. Nope. The Stefan, like, there's this one map coming up. I think it's map 10, where the key budget is really, really tight, and if you get it wrong, you'll end up with no keys and doors yet to open. Did I miss something over here? Nope. Nope. So what? I just ran out of keys.
Oh, that's right. You can't say. You can only save at the end of a level, right? You can't.
That's correct.
So
there's no.
So yeah, see, kids, in the old days, games were tough. You actually had to complete a level. Now there's, I'll pick this up and do something dangerous, but I can always go back to my last save. No,
right. Yeah. Nope.
No checkpoints. No nothing. The level was basically the checkpoint, and then you had the option to save there because
Well, part of the reason, I mean, we could have done.
We now call this we call basically this idea like sort of like nightmare mode on a regular PC game where it's like, oh, you can't save except at very well-defined blocks of time. So.
Well, part of that is. I considered whether to save in mid-level saves, right. And I decided not to because that would require storing the state of every monster.
Right. Well, you could break it down to a bit thing of like, are they dead or not? Essentially,
Right.
But it would be relatively large save game, and plus it's sort of like do you really need it allows people to kind of. Yeah, I won't say cheat, but it's like makes the game way easier than it would normally be. They can just clear out a large section, save, clear out a large section, save.
Mm-hmm.
As if they were using 3DO animator, right? Open door, save, open doors. That's 3DO animator was like this big monolithic program, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was basically a kludge of Studio 32 from Electronic Arts, because Electronic Arts was our tool vendor, so to speak, and that was a consequence of the fact that 3DO was founded by Trip Hawkins, and so before he officially separated from Electronic Arts. He simply said, hey, let's help these guys out. There we go. Is that the only one on this wall? Yes. Okay,
Yeah, that was the era of like monolithic programs or whatever. It was sort of like, let's integrate everything into one package, which for game developers is probably not a good idea.
No.
Batch process, because when you're doing game art assets, if you can't batch process, if you have to like literally go into a program like, say, today would be something like Photoshop, open a single file, do something to it, close it, save it, do it again. That gets really old real fast. You need to be able to like batch convert stuff, pipelines, and it's like there was that weird time there when they thought it was like, hey, we don't need programmers anymore to make games.
Just have a bunch of scripts.
Artists can do it. It was around the was around the time of Myst, where suddenly somebody got the idea. It's like, hey, artists can just by themselves make something with this visual scripting hyperstack thingy or something.
Yeah, card hype.
And then, that quickly died once you got a zillion Myst clones and then realized, yeah, you kind of need engineers for things like gameplay. But also the whole thing was like the development environment was going to be this like nice, friendly, gooey, point and clicky, Mac-y thing, and it's
right.
Yeah, and then
that's been a holy grail for decades now.
And it's, every year somebody comes up with the look, you could just point and click and make your game. And it's like there's not a button, there's not a make game button anywhere.
No, not going to be.
Every now and then somebody will say it's like, we really need to increase the fun of this section. I'll just say it's like, well, let me just get to the fun slider, crank it up. And it's like, oh, sorry, fun buffer overflow. We can't crank it up that high. So yeah, you still need engineers, even if you're using like a pre-built engine, you still end up needing engineers unless you're doing something that's literally just like a mod where you're just changing out the models and the just skinning the game essentially. It's but yeah, I remember when we got around to doing M2, they realized kind of the folly of the whole like lets everything go through this one very fragile Mac package, and so we went to more traditional, which we still use this very day, batch processing tools where it's like, okay, have a tool that takes in a common format that every art program in the world can output, and have it convert to your custom format, and do it quickly, and do it in batches, and make it very flexible, and port that tool to every platform on the planet. So if your developers are using expensive SGI workstations, they can run your batch script. If they're running on Macs, they can run your batch script. If you're running on Linux workstations, or, well, that time it wasn't Linux, it was
Linux
just showed up. Yeah, it was generic Unix stations, or if they're running PCs, they can
Sun workstations. Yeah.
They can run your batch script and chain them together in a nice, efficient way, and as quickly as possible get something up and running. Because most developers usually are not going to devote their entire life to your custom development chain. They're probably making for multiple platforms and
a lot of ghosts in there.
And nicely transparent, too. You can see right through them.
Yep.
So I take it you had to sort those little buggers.
Yeah. That's one of the things that killed me on the progenitor of this. That I mentioned in the last episode. The project that got aborted to make this was the sorting problem. And that's why this engine was so much easier to make, because a giant cube map is trivially sortable.
Yes. Well, it's interesting you bring that up with sorting, because another first-person game on the 3DO, PO'd.
Yes.
Which is a full 3D engine.
Right.
Those guys, when they went to do it on the PlayStation, found, like they said, the PlayStation is faster at raw math, but it was slower than certain things in the 3DO. Its rasterizer was slower, had less flexible format. But the thing that actually was killing them performance-wise was sorting. And so something they figured out on the 3DO that they could do was the cell engine. They'd figured out a nifty way of very quickly, basically for free, bucket sorting with the cell engine. So I'm not referring to a PlayStation 3 cell engine. I'm referring to the graphics chip on the 3DO, where they basically created a whole bunch of cell entries, and then used they used 16-bit depth. They looked at the first 8 bits, and they would write it out to. They had, I think, 256 bogus cell entries, and then they just added to each of those. And then they'd walk the list again using the lower 8 bits. I think it's like they did the lower first and then they did the upper next. And they'd write that out to another list, and then boom, it's sorted by the cell engine as it's traversing the list. They'd figured out, they said basically it's free bucket sorting for arbitrary bucket sorting. And something they said, that it like basically made up the difference in terms of the processing power, because the PS3 had to do that on the CPU.
Yeah.
And that was actually a slow process.
Right.
And Whereas like the 3DO was free. So like the transform stuff that was way faster on the PS3 was slower on the 3DO. So it's sort of like they sort of evened each other out. You know, the sorting trick that they figured out. And it was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that totally would work. It was very clever. So you see just taking their 16-bit number, looking at 8 bits at a time of it, and using just the cell engine's natural ability to like change. I guess it's a linked list of cells.
Yes.
To just automatically create a final linked list just by traversing the cells.
Yeah. Basically, the cells.
You said to incur the memory cost of like 512 entries.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. The 3DO cell engine had basically a 32-bit pointer that pointed to the next cell to be rendered. So you would pass the hardware a pointer to a cell, and then it would follow the chain until it found an entry with the last bit set, as it was called, and then it would stop.
Right.
And so, like, programming all this stuff together was just like cake.
Yeah.
And CPU addresses were the same as hardware addresses, so it was just, almost embarrassingly easy to put together a fairly complex bit of rendering.
Yeah. And I read that, I was kind of sad because it's like if more developers had learned stuff like that, I think. The 3DO might have had a longer life than it did.
I wish I'd known that, because I saw PO'd and I said that's pretty much what I wanted to do. It's very similar to what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that actually
is that coming at me. Yep.
Now
Gotcha.
As somebody's working on not a first person but a third person game like that, the first thing I mean to say is like, wow, I wish you'd put a sound effect on that thing as it whizzed by.
Sort of a whooshing noise.
Because it's like that would really sell it, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's but I mean, yeah, for a launch title, this is launch window title.
Yes.
This is quite impressive. This kept me busy many a night. And yeah, the production values, it's a relatively small team of people worked on this.
About there was me, there was John Loop doing programming. We had one other gentleman who helped with the sound, because the sound. Hello there. The sound was actually kind of complicated from my point of view, because it was a DSP sort of plug board sort of affair, where you created these DSP elements and then wired them all up in software.
Which was, itself way ahead of its time.
Yes. But I didn't quite grasp that. And so another fella came in and wrote most of that code so that I could just say, play this sound effect. Like ding, ding, all those.
Yeah.
And then the streaming in the background, that's actually an AIFF file playing off the CD.
Yeah, the sound hardware in the 3DO was actually very sophisticated. I don't think, of like all the three consoles at the time, I think it was probably the best sound in terms of hardware complexity. Saturn might have been pretty good as well, but it's like, I mean, I developed on the PlayStation 2, and I don't think it probably had as capable sound hardware as the 3DO did. I mean, because the PlayStation basically had Super Nintendo sound hardware in it, because it started life as basically the CD-ROM adapter for the Super Nintendo. I mean, that's
that I hadn't heard.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a pretty famous story about they were basically going to be like what the Sega CD was. Sony was making the CD drive for the Super Nintendo. Then it was like CES or something. Nintendo, unbeknownst to Sony, announced that their partner for that would be Philips, not Sony.
Oh.
Sony being, Japanese.
Yeah. Said, you have dishonored us.
Basically, yes. They said, I don't care what it costs, we're going to make our own game console using this technology, and we're going to bankrupt you. This was full-on revenge mode out of Sony. Because otherwise, Sony, why would we bother getting into that market? It's silly.
And when Sony announced that they were getting into that, I scoffed, because they'd never done it before. And I thought, what do you think you're doing?
Yeah, they their inexperience actually was probably like their best thing going for them, and the fact they were doing it sort of out of blind rage. So because their hardware is very simple. It's
What, PS3, PS2,
no
PS.
PlayStation. Yeah,
Wow.
it's basically a
Where am I
bunch
going?
of very off-the-shelf chips kind of thrown together, like they said, the Super Nintendo sound hardware. Because that's what they knew how to use, and they knew it was. I think it's like an Ensoniq sound chips, like same thing like in the Apple II GS, or very same family.
2G Whiz.
Yeah, but it was just like, okay, what's a fast processor we can throw in here? Boom, we got it. So it wasn't a very deep console, but it's very simple, and it's sort of like, here's a hardware manual, guys, go at it. And that appealed a lot to developers who were used to doing that for other platforms.
Hardware banging, and
yeah, and so that worked to their advantage. When the PlayStation 2 came around, it kind of didn't as much, but they had so much momentum, it worked out for them. Because people's like, blown off the Dreamcast, and they got the PlayStation 2, and they're like, oh wow, we're stuck with this. We've already kind of passed on the Dreamcast, and so we're kind of stuck with this hardware, which wasn't as clean as the original PlayStation. But yeah, I mean, Sony's dead simple approach was great for a lot of developers. They had a few uncertain months there, but everybody was willing to give them a try because they were cheap relative to like the Saturn, and their hardware was very straightforward and had a lot of power in certain areas.
Ooh, that okay.
But yeah, it was. I was still, like I said, I was kind of sad that people never dug deep into the 3DO, like all the little nooks and crannies of what it could do, like they did with like earlier platforms.
No, I would have liked to have seen the PO'd code. I mean, that sort of depth sorting was exactly the sort of thing that I was trying to make work.
That game is very impressive for a couple of reasons. One, it's a full 3D game. Unlike Doom, which is Doom is really a 2D. It has a 2D map.
Yes.
There's no places that exist height-wise in two. You can't exist two places height-wise in that thing. There's no like under-over staircases in that game. Whereas PO'd was actually a full 3D game, 3D physics, really good movement physics. Wow, you're kind of out of it.
Oh, I know. Oh, I gotta do it again. It's like
is that Les's laugh?
That's Les.
Okay. I was wondering if you're going to use RJ's laugh.
No.
That was later used in Return Fire or whatever.
Now I gotta do this all over again.
Kind of wishing you had the mid-level save now, aren't you?
Oh, God.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I mean,
but it wouldn't be a game otherwise.
It's kind of hard to talk and multitask.
Why, you want to drive now?
Well, maybe. Well, if you have a story you want to relate and you need me to drive for a while.
I was hoping I wouldn't die until the next map, because that's when the spiders come out.
Ah, yes.
Okay.
And also, since this is the first hard, I think part of the problem with this is the first hard map, so you hear this music a lot, and you hear "tread carefully" a lot.
Yeah. Oh, there's a story. There was. This was also during the dawn of everybody getting really pissy about copyright. Even little snippets, like rap artists were using
Vanilla Ice and the whole taking stuff from Queen, that kind of thing.
Yeah, little fragments being used in other words. So the original version of this cut, hello there, had a had a snippet that says, "Be careful where you tread," but which was from a larger work. And I don't remember what it was from. It was from some other scary record, scary sound effects record. And the lawyer said, no, can't use that. So it had to be replaced. It had to be replaced. So this is basically a snippet from Les and during one of the between level things saying, tread carefully now.
It's certainly the most memorable sound bite in the game for me. Is like tread carefully.
Well, first, yeah, because he's like saying it a billion times.
Yeah, but like I said, it just fits nicely with the level. I mean, this is not my favorite piece of music in the level, but it's not too bad if you get through the level quickly.
Hint, hint.
But there's I think like the very next piece of music we hear in the game is like one that I actually, it's just, there's a lot of sound effects on it, a lot of ambient sound effects, and I will actually use that. Back when I used to get trick-or-treaters at my apartment a lot, I would actually crank up the sound system, put the music for this on.
Really?
And basically it's like my house, my apartment was suddenly a haunted house that the kids love to trick-or-treat at because it has like the occasional screams, the moans, the chain rattling, and all that stuff, and it's like like nice. Perfect Halloween music is on this thing. I know people on the internet have ripped all the audio tracks out of this and
it turns
posted
out
them online.
It turns out that's really easy.
Well, yeah,
ripping
it's
the
an
original
AIFF file, right?
Yeah, it's an AIFF file, but also the file system. Is there a door back here? No. The AIFF, the file system, basically tries to store data in contiguous blocks. So all you really have to do is find the block that has the AIFC header on it, and AIFC describes its own size.
Right.
So, hey there. So just then slurp up that many blocks, contiguous blocks off the disk. You've got the whole file.
Carefully now.
Yeah. We should one of these we should play PO'd, some of the later levels. That's one of those like unsung games on the system.
Oh yeah.
Because, well, I mean, a lot of people have played it. See, that's the problem. Is a lot of people will play the first level and then they'll give up on it.
Really?
Because,
hard?
Well, it's not that it's hard. It's kind of it's one of those like you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Oh.
And a lot of people are just put off by the frying pan as the weapon. The fact that you have to earn every weapon along the way. And you start off with, a frying pan because you're supposed to be a cook. It's kind of got that whole like under siege Steven Seagal movie plot thing going. But yeah, and they don't like, it's like you move slow and all that stuff. I would kind of agree with them, except I'd played the demo of this. It was like one of those 3DO sampler discs, and they smartly on that one chose a later level where you got the jetpack, and you got a whole bunch of weapons. And so I knew the game was going to get better. And it is actually a great thing in a game where if you know it's going to get better, it's great. That they have this wonderful progression of like getting a better and better weapon, and then you unlock the jetpack, and that's got by far PO'd all-time best jetpack in a game.
Really?
In terms of physics, which is amazing considering you're doing it on the 3DO pad. You have to control the thing, but it's like you very quickly can learn how to control that, and you can be, elegantly strafing and shooting things, and you can control it just perfect, and it feels like a jetpack. Unlike most first-person shooters where you have a jetpack, where they literally just change your height. It's like you have like elevator shoes on or something. It's just like up, you're on a crane or something. You're just up and down. You don't feel like you're actually in a jetpack. That one, they really did a great job on the movement physics.
Sounds like if you tell Yahtzee Croshaw about that, he likes jetpacks.
Yeah. But yeah, it really is good where it's like you can just do like these precision, like, it's going to hop over there, hit the old jetpack and zip over there, and you feel like you're landing and everything. And you're walking around, the movement physics are great now. You don't slide around like you're in a wheelchair, like in most of these games. Yeah, sorry. It actually will tilt the camera ever so slightly. I love when you walk backwards off a ledge. If you did that in Doom or something, the camera would just, you'd see the view just vertically translate up. And that one, on PO'd, if you walk backwards off a ledge, the camera tilts up.
Oh,
as if you're like
going,
as you're looking up, like the last view, like the coyote has, as he's falling off a cliff. It's like and it's perfect. It really has great movement physics. And it's one of those like games where I think that was a first time developer.
I believe so. I believe it was. I saw like a prototype.
And I think they've done a few things on the PC after that, but I don't know but they were from Sun Microsystems, like the guys.
Oh, originally?
Yes. If I remember their history, they worked like in the graphics division or something of Sun, Where I said, hey, we know all about this 3D stuff. Let's do a full 3D first-person shooter. This is before Quake, so
right.
But it's like, the graphics get, after that first level, the graphics get better. Also, the thing is just huge in scope. There's these wonderful vertical levels where it's like it's not like you're trudging through corridors. Suddenly, once they get the jetpack, you have these wide open spaces that you're going through, and you have these levels where you've got to basically go up vertically with your jetpack. You're not like, you know, just trugging along. So it has a very epic feel to it, and it has some really nice use of, you know, the 3D graphic effects for, like, you know, you see like reflections on floors in some areas and stuff.
Really? Wow.
Or
I don't remember seeing that.
But it's like in the later levels, and again, it's like they should have made a more impressive first level. I mean, that was their downfall in terms of a lot of people just got turned off after the first level. It's like, yeah, this is no fun. And they could have used a better art director, or an art director period, because
most of I do remember what I remember of PO'd was that the floors and everything were pretty much like solid color polys.
Probably to get around texture distortion more than anything else,
right?
And also help their performance a bit. But they were full 3D polys. That was the thing. So it was, but I mean, you could just see it's like they had this wonderful engine and this wonderful gameplay, but there's just something about, you know, like their demo. At least they cut this for the demo. They had these monsters which were essentially walking butts. Essentially, it was like basically a person.
I think I remember that.
Decapitate at the butt level, and their attack was, well, a fart, essentially, complete with sound effect. Now they didn't take that out of the final game, but at least they cut down the fart sound, so it didn't sound so juvenile. But you can tell these are like kids going, yeah, wouldn't it be cool? You can almost hear like Beavis and Butthead making the game. And so if they just had like somebody a little more seasoned as their art director or something, they really could have, you know, done it. I think they could have got, you know, huge sales and a lot of recognition out of that game. Sort of like it's a diamond in the rough. You could just kind of see it there. It's like, you know, like say if they had like say a Kim Tempest or something working on their game with them, say it's like, yeah, guys, that's nice and all, but you know, might want to class it up just a little bit here.
I think there was some stuff left in here, but totally out of. Yes.
Gee, do you have to consult the map? Is your mutant mapping ability not kicking in?
It's not. It hasn't kicked in, but I was able to find my way back here without looking at it.
Well, you don't want to be like stuck without keys or something.
Is there how many keys do I have?
Oh yeah, see, I was wondering. That's like, couldn't have put a little sprite on the gun, like how many keys you have? On your HUD there.
Well, we might have done. I don't know how good it would look. We only have 320 by 240 pixels, and then it's getting mushed through NTSC. So
I get it, but you know, get it in a little square or something. Not maybe the number of keys, but some little pips or something. On the gun there, you have some little red dots there.
I think that might have been the part of like an original plan, but
like I mean, my favorite, like I mean, HUD or no HUD is always like the big issue on games nowadays. Nowadays, it's like if you can go HUDless, it's considered, you know, innovative and immersive.
Okay.
Yes, but you still have a HUD. You just have to figure out maybe make it seem organic to the environment, like you know, say hologram on your weapon or something that shows you the counter of the ammo instead of something that's plastered on your screen.
Right.
But of course, it's like, I just assume everybody has those Google glasses in the future. And then it makes, you know, in the future, you'll have a HUD. You'll have a HUD in real life anyway. So what's real life? Yeah. But no, but I was thinking like my favorite like example of like in-game HUD that wasn't really intentional was like Shockwave. The open when you're going down to the planet, and the canopy is closed. But you're getting videos. Basically, there's like a whole bunch of like little red indicators on the thing there, and what it is, it's actually the streaming. It's telling you, like, it's basically telling the programmers like how full the buffers are.
Oh,
the streaming buffers. And I thought, oh, that's a great way of doing it without having to incur like you know, basically have debug information in your final build of your game, so that you can better test it. Because you know, just having the debug info often affects the performance of your game.
Yep.
So it's like. We have a thing where it's like our stat screen is like the most expensive thing to draw on our VFX system because you're copying all those individual little letters of text onto the screen.
Right, yeah.
Even today is actually enough to affect your final game performance. Like, does it run at 60? Wait, turn off your debug info. Yeah, it does. Okay. Yeah. But it's like, I thought that was a clever way. It's like, just put some stuff on the dashboard so that A, it makes the dashboard look alive, and B, it gives us useful debugging information. It's like, Win-win.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hey. Could it be a trap?
No.
Do you ever script guys so it's like they come attack you once you pick up the talisman or something?
No. Although we did have a feature, there's another item that I remembered. We did have a feature that was implemented partially, but never actually used in the game, and that is basically floor triggers to open doors.
Interesting.
The idea being that you would walk into an intersection and then step on the trigger pad in the middle of the intersection, and then a bunch of doors would open and everybody would start coming after you.
Monster closet.
Yeah, something
before there was actual monster closets.
The trouble was I couldn't make it. Yeah, I couldn't make it work because sometimes the floor pads would double trigger. It would open the door and then close it again in rapid succession. And I worked at it for several days and couldn't quite figure out why it was doing that. And so ultimately I said, no, this isn't really adding anything to the game. I'm not going to worry about it.
So all these wonderful features you wanted to have, and you didn't have time because the clock's ticking.
Yep.
Was there ever talk of doing a Monster Manor sequel? An actual sequel, not
an actual sequel, not Killing Time.
Yes.
I don't know that there was. I think because when I came out of this, I was sufficiently burned out that I was kind of not interested in doing another game again. Certainly not on the schedule that I had done this. And so there wasn't really any talk of sequel to this game directly.
Even say a month or two down the road, and sort of after the sales started coming in,
I don't know. I don't actually know how well this sold.
Because
they didn't share the sales figures with me.
Yeah.
I heard it made back its budget.
Yeah, well, I'd hope so. It's a relatively small team. It was a really good game, and it was an early game. So even though there weren't that many 3DOs out there in the world, this still was a must-have title. What are you going to buy? Bird's Life? Come on. Because there was a really this was probably the premier game for a very long time, because I remember the first few games that were out was Stellar 7, Draxon's Revenge featuring Michael Dorn. They probably blew most of their budget on getting him to do the voiceover. There was that. I think Mad Dog McCree was one of the earlier ones too, with the gun.
Oh great, I'm backed into a corner again.
And there was Dragon. So Crash and Burn was a pack, and everybody had that. There you go. And then I want to say Dragon's Lair was also early in there too. This was the first really hardcore game. Stellar 7 was a little bit, but it was sort of an up-res, port of the old PC game, which was a souped-up battle zone, not something that really no. You and your wait. None in the corners there?
Okay. So any more gun power to be had?
Really tempting fate here, dude.
No, I've cleaned this area out.
Okay.
There's another thing that I don't like areas that spawn. So when I designed it, I said no, there's not going to be such a thing as random monster spawning. When you clean out an area, it's clean.
Which, yes, debate still goes on today, and most people come down to the side of let's just not have an infinite spawn. It's just not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. So
if you have a vent or something.
Yeah, except you kind of have to. I've never played a Doom 2000 or whatever it was, but basically you have to play that game walking backwards.
Doom 2000?
Yeah, the Doom 3 or whatever.
Doom 3, the one with the flashlight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, no, if you play it backwards, you'll get waylaid from behind. Because there's a lot of stuff that spawns in front of you.
Right. Well, my understanding was it's you'd clean out a room, and then you'd walk into the next room, and then stuff from the previous room that you just cleaned out would come through and get you. And so you probably, basically, you had to walk through every door backwards because you knew stuff was going to try and attack you from behind.
Yeah, that's the problem with the monster closet thing, where it's just I hit a random trigger, door opens that is to a 1x1 space that apparently the monster has just been living in for the last 10 years with no food or water. Waiting for you to come along and then open up. And thankfully the architects put these wonderful sliding doors in there for no reason whatsoever.
Okay, so let's see what Les has to say here.
By the way, you've never had nightmares of spiders, have you? Disgusting little creatures, but oh so persistent. Watch your step. Even little things underfoot can be fatal.
Well, that's not foreshadowing at all.
No, not at all. Hang on. Let's see here. Okay. Ding. All right.
Game has been saved.
Oops. Well,
Wait, did you save it?
I think
you saved it with no name. You let them save with no name.
maybe. I don't honestly remember. That would have been dumb, but it's possible we allowed that. But yeah, no. So hang on. Let's just
Save to the selected slot because you had 2 selected. Well, now you've overwritten your 1 game, so
right. So
you're playing
anyway,
playing dangerous here.
Well, I would have suggested going on to the next map, except I died on this one. So basically you got 2 maps for the price of 1.
How long have we been doing this?
About 45 minutes, which going over an hour is kind of probably not a thing. So we'll be covering map number 4 next time. Thank you all very kindly for joining us.